Today we're going to study about coordination in plants. Let's study the two types of movements in plants. In plants you find two kinds of movements. One of the movement is dependent on the growth. So first movement is growth dependent. Okay. Second movement is growth independent. So plants show two kinds of movement: growth dependent and growth independent. Okay. These are the movements in the plants, right? And what we study in this chapter we study about coordination. What's the meaning of coordination? Okay. Coordination means it's an ability to use different parts of the body smoothly and efficiently, right? Coordination is the ability of plants and animals, okay, to use the different parts of the body parts efficiently, efficiently and smoothly. This is called coordination. Okay. And like we have different body parts, our arms and eyes, we should be able to use all these body parts efficiently and smoothly, right? And in animals you find coordination is done by two systems. One is nervous system and the second one is endocrine system, which we'll study in another chapter. Okay. Endocrine system is made up of hormones. Endocrine system produce hormones and that controls and coordinates the body. The nervous system produce electrical impulses, electric current, which control the muscles. And muscles help in control and coordination. But what is the problem with plants? Plants do not have nervous system. Okay, they don't have an endocrine system, but they do produce some hormones. They can produce some hormones. So they have a different method of coordination. Coordination in plants is controlled very differently than humans and animals. The reason they don't have a nervous system, they don't have muscles. Second reason, they don't have many endocrine glands, no endocrine glands, but they produce some hormones, okay, without the endocrine glands. And the difference is here. The plants coordinate their movement, their growth by growth dependent responses and growth independent responses, or growth dependent movement and growth independent movement. I'll give you an example for growth independent movement. The example here is when you touch the plant mimosa. Okay, mimosa is also called touch me not. Touch me not is a plant. When you touch this plant, you can see it fold its leaves and the leaves droop down. And there's no growth happening in the leaves. But the moment you touch, there are some changes happening in the leaves. We'll study it on the next slide. And those changes help the plant to fold its leaf. So this movement in the plant is without growth. But there's some other movements, like take the example of sunflower. You can see sunflower keeps bending towards the sun. It faces the sun all the time, from morning to evening. Early morning, it faces east. Okay. By noon, it's up, and by evening, it turns to west. Right? How the movement happens? This movement is with the help of growth. Okay. So there are two kinds of movement: growth dependent movement and growth independent movement. That's how coordination is done in plants. Okay. Let's look at the examples. That's the first example. Okay, here, this is growth independent. Remember, there is no growth happening here. So we call it growth independent movement. Okay, through movement, the plants are responding, coordinating. Remember that. This is before you touch. The moment you touch, you can see the leaves are folding up. So what exactly happens when you touch? When you touch, two changes happens. There are some electrical changes, means electric charges. are being changed, which we don't study in our syllabus. And the second change, chemical changes. Two changes happens when you touch. There's a slight change in electric charge. Okay, even we have charges on the finger, and those charges make some changes in the cells of the leaf, and that leads to release of some chemicals, uptake of some chemicals. So we have to learn like electrical change and chemical change happens in the leaf. Yeah, look at this leaf. If that's a leaf, this is a complete leaf. Each one is a leaflet. What you look here is, see here is a leaflet. It's not a leaf. So many leaflet form one leaf. And if you look closely at the base of each leaflet, there's a small stalk. You can see that. There's a tiny stalk, and that's what's shown here. This is the leaflet. That's a leaflet. What you see here is a leaflet. And that's the base of the leaflet. Okay? It has a name. It's a kind of leaf stalk, or they call it pulvinus, which is not in our syllabus. Don't memorize it, understand it. That's the base of the leaf. And this is the open leaf, upright. Leaflets are upright and straight. The moment the person touches on the leaf, because of electrical and chemical changes, the cells on this part, okay, cells over here and cells over here, right? Those cells are filled with, these cells are filled with water. They suddenly release water. See, they're releasing water. When the water is released, we know that when cells are filled with water, the cells are turgid. When they release water, they become flaccid. Okay, cells become flaccid. It's like you fill up air in a balloon. It's very similar to that. Think about a long cylindrical balloon. You fill it with balloon air, it become inflated, which is similar to turgid cells. When the cells are turgid, it has a lot of strength, so it keeps the leaf open and upright. But the moment the air goes out from the balloon deflates. Similar to that, these cells which suddenly loses water, they lose the turgor pressure. The pressure inside is lost. And because of that, what happens? The leaflets fold inwards. Okay. And once a stimulus is removed, again the electrical and chemical changes become normal. Water is taken back into the cells, and cells become turgid here. Here the cells remain turgid. Here the cells become flaccid only on one side, only on the upper side. Here the cells become flaccid. And this is how the touch me not plant respond to a stimulus. There's no growth here. You don't see growth happening. What you see here is changes in the turgor pressure inside the cells of the leaf. That's what happens. And why those changes happens? Because when you touch, there are changes in electrical property and chemical property. Chemical changes and electrical changes happen that allows water to come out. After some time, when the stimulus is no more there, the electrical and chemical changes become normal. Water goes in, the leaf become normal. So this keeps happening. When the stimulus is given, means when you touch, it becomes this way. When it's not there, it goes back to normal state. And this is an example for growth independent response. Okay, growth independent movement, because there's no growth here. Movement is just because of changes in the pressure inside the cells of the leaf. All right. Okay, look at this one. This is a germinating seed. That's a seed germinating, and what you see down is a root, radical, or the root. Okay, root is emerging. And you can see that this root, which was so tiny, now it's going downwards. The direction has changed. It literally bends up and it's growing downwards. Okay, it's bending downwards. It has become longer. That means there is growth happening, isn't it? Because of growth, what is growth? What exactly is the growth? When the number of cells increase in the cell is called growth. Increase in the size of the cell. Now, when these two things happen, we call it growth. So the cells are increasing, and you can see the root is growing downwards, and that's a shoot. This part is the shoot, which is the stem and the leaves. Okay, stem and leaf are together known as shoot. Look at the shoot. It's growing upwards. And you can definitely see it is longer. So there is growth happening here. Means number of cells are increasing, size is increasing, and it's bending, going upwards, right? This is an example. Seed germination is an example of movement due to growth. This is an example for movement due to growth, right? Okay. And let's study in detail about it. Yeah, before we go further, let's look at similarity and differences in the response in plants with animals. Okay, we are comparing, right? If you look at plants and animals, what happens in animals? How do animals move? Animals move with the help of two systems. One is nervous system. In nervous system, what do you find? Nervous system, you can see neurons, right? There are neurons in our body, and the brain is connected through the neurons to the muscles. And we know muscles contain specialized protein. Okay, there are proteins in the muscle for contraction, and these muscles contract. When contraction of muscles, when the muscles contract, the muscles are getting smaller in size. Okay, long muscle becomes smaller. There's a change in the shape of the muscle, and this contraction will cause movement. And that's how animals move. Okay, and so what's happening here? You can see the brain is producing an electrical impulse, an electric current passing down through the neurons. So you need neurons, you need a nervous system, you need specialized cells called smooth muscles, and they have specialized proteins, and the size of the muscles change, they become smaller, and that pulls the body parts causing the movement, right? And this is fast. It's a very fast process, and it happens quickly. But look at animals. What's wrong with the animals? If you look at the animals, in animals, you don't see a nervous system. They don't have a nervous system. That's one of the biggest disadvantage. Second difference, you don't see muscles. You don't see muscles. You don't see the special kind of proteins, okay, in the case of animals, right? So they don't have a fast response. The response in the case of, sorry, that's in plants, right? This is about plants. In plants, you don't find a nervous system, you don't find muscles, there is no neurons, there is no specialized protein like the animals. Here the response is fast, but here you find the response is very slow. And here it happens due to changes in the amount of water, okay, or change in the number of cells. That means cells will change the shape of the cell changes due to difference in the amount of water. Okay, shape or size of the cell changes when the water enters and leaves. That's the reason. Here, contraction of protein will change the size of the cells. Okay, so these are differences between responses in plants and animals, right? And in the case of animals, it's fast and more efficient, and it has a nervous system, it has brain, it has neurons, it has muscles, and these muscles contract with the help of these proteins. Those proteins make the muscles smaller, and that causes the movement. But in plants, you don't find those proteins. Those proteins are absent. There is no neurons. Neurons are absent here. There is no muscle and muscle protein, and the response is slow. Movement is slow, and there is change in the shape of cell. That's because of entry and exit of water, or due to growth. Increase in the parts of the plant is due to the growth. And these are the differences and similarities between response in plants and animals. This is the first kind of movement due to growth. So there you can see this is that's a stem. This is the stem, right, of a plant. And this plant has um, tendrils. These structures are known as, that's a tendril. You might have seen this, That is a non-living support. That's a support. It's a non-living support. And the living tendril, which is a part of plant, is helping the plant to climb up. Okay, how? How does it? How does it climb? Let's understand the mechanism of climbing. How this is helping the plant to climb up. That let's say this is the non-living support. That's a part of the plant. I mean, this is the this part represents the support. Okay, that's a support, right? And let's suppose that that's the tip. This is the tip of the tendril. Okay, tendril tip. That's the tip of the tendril. When the tip is in contact with this, it will come when it come close to this. You will find two sides on this. The one side of the tendril is in contact with the support. So that's a contact surface. Okay, and the other one is not in contact. Okay, the opposite side. This side is not in contact with the support. So this tendril has two sides. One side is in contact with the support, which is this part, right? And in plants, remember, when when any part of the plant comes in contact with any object, it stops growing. So on this side, the growth stops. This side, the growth stops. When the growth stops here, other side, it continue to grow. Okay, there is growth on the part which is not in contact, this one, but there's no growth on the this side. So what happens? This side, the one which is not in contact, start growing faster than the other side. When it grows faster than the other side, you can see it is bending. See, when one side grows faster than the other side, right, it causes bending. This side is not growing much. This side has very little growth, and the tip is bending. And once it bends, you can see this side is in contact. So the position of the growth changes. When the position of growth changes, the opposite side, now this side is growing faster than the other. And it continue to grow and it coils up that way. So what's happening here is that one side which is in contact with the support grows. The one which is not in contact with growth, and that keeps changing. As it keeps changing, it keeps growing, like a spring all around, right? And this is the movement due to growth. Okay, what's the point? How do you understand it? How do you memorize it? The part of the tendril which is in contact with the support stops growing, but the opposite parts continue to grow. So that means when one side grows more than the other, see like this, it bends. And bending continues. As the bending continues, this side is not growing much, but it does grow a little bit, not much. And that continues and it turns into a loop. Okay, that continues and become a loop, and that's how here you can see the tendril is it's looping up. Okay, and the part which is in contact with the support, it doesn't grow. The outer part keeps growing, and that helps it to climb up. So this is an example for growth movement due to growth, and this helps plant to climb up on any support, any support. Okay, that's another example for uh, movement due to growth, right? If you look at any plant, let's say this is a plant, and in this plant, okay, let's say that's a plant, and in this plant every plant you find two parts. This is the shoot, that's a shoot, and those are the roots. These are the roots. Every plant has two parts, root and shoot. So this is the shoot, and that's the root. What do you mean by shoot? It has stem and leaves. And let's say this is the source of energy, light, okay, sunlight. And you can see that the tip of the shoot always keeps growing to the sun. If the sun is up, it keeps going to the sun, and it's going towards the sun, right? And look at the root. Root is being attracted by gravity, mainly gravity. So the root keeps going down to gravity, right? And this response is known as tropism. Okay, this kind of response is called tropism. Tropism is response of plants to a stimulus. It could be light or it could be gravity. That means there are two kinds of, it's a growth response. Growth response due to a stimulus like light and gravity. If it's due to light, you call it phototropism. Okay, and if it's due to gravity, this is called geotropism. Geotropism. Okay, in phototropism, you can see the shoot is going to the light, so they call it like positive phototropism, right? And why the root is growing downwards, and because it's going down to gravity. Okay, this is called positive geotropism. Okay, simply call it phototropism too. And suppose you change the position of light, what will happen? Put the light on the side, like in this picture, you can see light is coming from a window over here, and you can see the shoot is bending to the light. Wherever is the light, it bends to that. Why? So that it gets more light for photosynthesis. See the leaves here. Leaves are actually facing the light so that it can capture more energy for photosynthesis, right? To produce more food. So this is due to growth. We'll study how it is bending. Here growth happens. In this case, it's growing upwards to the light. Here, it's growing towards the light. This is another example for the movement due to growth. It can be due to gravity. It's called geotropism. Geo means earth. Photo means light. Phototropism. Tropism means response or the movement. Okay, right. Okay, that's another example. You can see all the sunflowers in this field is facing the sun. The sun is, rising in the east. Okay, all of them are, thousands of them are facing the sun, and they continue to grow. Okay, this continued to happen until the sunset. And this is one more example for uh, the response by growth. Okay, here we study how the plant tip, shoot tip is bending to the light. When the light falls from the top, what happens? The tip will produce a hormone. This hormone is called auxin. Okay, the tip. So what forms the hormone? It's produced by the tip of the shoot. Shoot tip produces the hormone. There's no gland here. Okay, no endocrine gland like we have thyroid gland, isn't it? Adrenal gland and so on. But plants don't have these glands. The tip is producing the auxin. Auxin diffuses downwards, help the cell to grow, become bigger, and so the shoot goes up. If the light is coming from the top, the shoot will grow upwards. But if you give light from one side, what exactly happens? Most of the auxin is on the other side. Okay, imagine this is a dark room. You keep it in a dark room. Okay, just assume that it's a dark room, no light. When you give light, the light will form auxin on the tip, but most of the auxin actually move to the dark side. So there is more auxin on the dark side. Remember, greater the amount of auxin, greater the growth. So on this side, you find more growth. Growth of cells on this side is more than the growth of cells on other side. Okay, less growth. Here you find less growth. Because of difference in growth, it bends to one side, right? So this is the second example which we study, movement due to growth. Okay, how does it go? If the light is from the up from upright from the top, the tip will produce auxin. Auxin diffuses down, and cells below gets longer because of auxin, and it grows up. Second case, light is given from one side, and all the auxin gets collected, moved to the dark side. There's a shady side where there's less light. So there's more auxin on the shady side, so it grows faster than the other side and it bends to the light. Okay, yes, right. This is another tropism. Here the tropism is because of presence of water, right? and they call this hydrotropism. Hydrotropism is growth of roots to the water. Here you can see you put water in a porous, porous pot. Porous pot means clay pot. The clay pot can hold the water, but very little water keeps coming out. And water gives, it's a stimulus, because of water, what happens in the root? This root, more growth happens on one side. See, on this side, there's more growth than the other side. So you can see it's bending to this side. Okay, it's bending to the towards the, it's growing towards the water. And what's the benefit of this? This helps plants to absorb more water. Water is essential for the growth of plant, and the roots keeps looking for water and keeps growing towards the water. This response is known as hydrotropism. Okay, hydrotropism is a response, movement, growth, again due to growth. Remember, growth, movement of the roots towards the water. This is known as hydrotropism. The next example is another kind of growth that you can see, pollen grains. Those are the pollen grains. Pollen grains are brought here by the insects. After pollination, insect and wind or wind can bring the pollens here. After, once it stick to the stigma, remember that's a stigma. After sticking the stigma, it will absorb sugar which is on the stigma and start forming a pollen tube. That's a pollen tube. See, pollen tube is growing down and it's going to the ovule. That's the ovule. That's the opening of the ovule, right? How does the pollen tube know about the opening? Why is it growing exactly to that side? Because the ovule keeps secreting chemicals. Okay, it keeps producing chemicals. Those chemicals attract pollen tube to the opening here. This opening has a name which we don't study this year. I mean, in this chapter, but in another chapter. This is called micropyle. So we don't have to memorize this now. The ovule or the ovule is producing chemicals that attract pollen tube towards it, and it's growing. So this is called chemotropism. Okay, chemo means chemicals. Chemicals of the ovule are attracting the pollen tube towards it. So this is another example for movement due to growth. Is there growth? Yes, the pollen tube is growing. And how it is growing? By getting attracted by the chemical. By attracted by the chemical, it keeps growing to the ovule. And this kind of growth is called chemotropism. That's another example for movement due to growth. Okay, right. Look at this one. Right? In animals, how do animals respond to a stimulus or the growth? Through neurons. You can see these are neurons. Neurons produce an electric current, electric impulse. Electric impulse is produced, means electric current is produced, which goes to the muscles and muscles contract. Okay, but there is a problem here. There are limitations for the electrical system, right? What are the limitations of this electrical system? It's not possible to keep producing the electric current, right? Always it has to produce electric impulse. Electric impulse or electric current should be produced constantly, which is difficult, and it needs a lot of energy, right? And once it send the impulse, it reach only some of the cells, connected cells, not every part of the body. Okay, just go to that muscle which is connected. For example, when you pick up something, your biceps might contract. Only the biceps contract. Okay, so it just go to that part. Other part is not affected, right? And after conducting one impulse, it has to reset itself. Means like something like rebooting. It has to reboot itself to produce another impulse. And this needs a lot of energy. The cells have to spend a lot of energy. So this is an efficient system, but these are the disadvantage of producing electrical impulses. Like, for example, it has to first disadvantage, drawback. It has to keep producing electrical impulse all the time. If it doesn't produce, there won't be contraction of muscle, there won't be movement. And it is connected to a single part of the body, single organ. So only that part is affected. Other parts can't be controlled using this system. And the neuron has to take a rest and regain its energy to produce new impulse, and that needs a lot of energies used in the process, right? So these are the disadvantages of the electrical system. To overcome this problem, what animals have done, they started producing another molecule known as hormones. These are the hormones. Okay. And what is a hormone? Hormones are produced by the cells that you can see. That's a signaling cell. Okay, these cells produce hormones. These hormones go and bind to uh, the surface of other cells in the body. Okay, so it can be any part of the body, any cell, but provided those cells should have a receptor on the surface. See, they all have a receptor. Once the hormone binds to the receptor, that's a hormone molecule. If it binds to the receptor, it will produce changes here. And how the hormones travel through the cells? Simply by diffusion, it can travel by diffusion to the surrounding cell, or it is transported through the blood plasma. Blood transported to all other parts of the body. Okay, so animals have two systems. One system for coordination is the nervous system. We have seen the advantage and disadvantage. Okay, what's the advantage of nervous system? It is fast. It only stimulates one part of the body, right? And the response, quick response. Body will produce a very quick response. But what's the disadvantage? It affects it can affect only one organ or one part of the body. That's a disadvantage. It needs a lot of energy. It has to keep producing electric impulses, electric current all the time. Electric impulse should be produced all the time. And it has to reset itself to produce the new impulse. So that's the disadvantage of nervous system. But hormonal system overcome some of the disadvantages of the nervous system. The hormones travel through the blood, so it spread to all the parts of the body. It easily go to all body parts. Okay, it can just go by diffusion. It keeps going by diffusion, and it doesn't need much energy. Less energy is used, right? And it doesn't need neurons and electrical impulse. It just go and bind to the receptor of the other cell and produce the effect. So that's how the animal coordination happens through nervous system and with the help of hormones. And this system is called endocrine system. The next chapter will be talking about the hormones and endocrine system, right? Okay. Okay, look at the plant hormones. Plants produce many hormones. We have in our syllabus three different hormones. One is called gibberellin. Okay, we have studied auxin. We have three of them in the syllabus. Remember, auxin. And the first one was auxin. What does auxin do? It helps in the growth of plants, right? And it helps in producing the responses. Response to light, phototropism, gravitropism, and hydrotropism. These responses are caused by auxin. It also helps in overall growth. But look at this hormone. It's called gibberellins. Okay, these are other hormones. They are produced in the leaves of the plants. See, look at this example. What you see here is a cabbage. Cabbage is a very small plant. Reason, the distance. Have you ever seen the cabbage? If you take cross section of the cabbage, slice a cabbage. No, when your mom slice the cabbage, have a look at the cabbage. Inside the cabbage, you find there's a stem. You can see a stem, and the leaves are very close to each other. See, the leaves inside the cabbage are very closely arranged. And where do you find the leaves attached to the stem? It's called node. Okay, this is called node, right? Like that's the stem. This is the leaf, and this part is called node, node. Okay, let's say that's the next leaf. This is another node. And what do you call the distance between the two nodes? This space is called internode. This is called internode, right? And in the case of cabbage, cabbage is actually a shoot. It's a shoot. It has a stem, and those are the leaves. The things we eat, the part we eat, is actually the leaf, and that's a node. What you see here are the nodes. That's a node, another node, and you can see internode between them. The internode is very short. Okay, right? Internode is very short, so that's why the cabbage remains very, very short. It's a very tiny dwarf plant. But you spray gibberellins on the cabbage. These are three cabbages on which they sprayed gibberellins. What exactly happened? It's internode. See the internode. That's a node, internode. All the internodes have become longer. And what happened to the plant? The stem has become, very tall. This is cabbage too. But we can't eat this cabbage. And we can eat this cabbage because it's tender. It grows slowly and it's like packed into each other. This is the one which is sprayed with gibberellin. So what gibberellins do? They help in elongation of the stem. They help in elongation of the stem. Okay, that we just have one function of it, and that's the cytokinin. Cytokinin helps in cell division, promotes cell division. Okay, remember cell division means more growth. If the cells divide, number of cells increase, they become bigger and faster growth. And wherever the cell is dividing, like on the tip of the root and shoot, on the tip of the root, cells divide. Tip of the stem, you can see cell division. And there you find auxin as well as cytokinin. There's plenty of cytokinin. Here the example is, this is artificially culturing the plants. This is called tissue culture. It's a technique of growing plants artificially. In this artificial medium, they call it like agar medium, jelly-like substance. In that, they put auxin, they put cytokinin, and look at the difference. The plant grow really fast. This is a cluster of many plants. Then they take one of the plant and transfer it to other medium. So what you have to memorize is it helps in cell division. It is mostly produced on the tip of the root and stem. And more cell division means faster growth. Okay. So these three hormones are, very growth causing hormones. Auxins help in growth. Gibberellins promote growth. Cytokinins promotes growth. But abscisic acid, okay, or ABA, abscisic acid actually stops growth. Okay, it inhibits growth. The example here, you can see the example. It promotes leaf fall. Okay, suppose the temperature is too hot. In summer, you might have seen the trees shedding leaves. Why do they shed leaves? Because of the extreme heat. The leaves start producing hormones. One of the hormones is abscisic acid. And what does abscisic acid do? It helps the stem to produce a layer of dead cells. See, that's the leaf. We are looking at this part. Can you see layer of dead cells here? It form a layer of dead cells, which cut off water and food supply to the leaf. Okay, the plant doesn't want the leaf anymore because it's too hot. It wants to shed the leaf to save water. If the leaf stays, it will cause more loss of water through transpiration. So the tree is trying to get rid of this leaf. So what does it do? This hormone helps it to form a layer of dead cells which block the flow of water, no more water, no more food to the leaf. Leaf turns yellowish in color, red in color, and it dies. And this is called wilting of the leaf. So you just have to learn one point here. You have to say that abscisic acid inhibits growth. Example, wilting of leaves. Okay, right. These are the three different four different hormones you have in your syllabus. You just have to learn the function as it is written in the reader. Okay, right. Thank you. Hope you understood the lesson. Thank you very much.